Hello, I'm Levi Rickert of Native News Online. Welcome to Native Bidaské, our weekly spotlight on people making news and leading change in Indian country. Today we have a very special guest who's Alyssa London, who is ClickNet out of Alaska. And Alyssa, welcome to Native Bidaské.
Ganeshish, thank you so much. My name is Alyssa London. I'm from the Tlingit tribe of Alaska. It's great to be here.
Yes, and Alyssa recently signed a contract to be on NBC News, but she's here to talk about her culture story that she's been developing for a number of years now. And Alyssa, as a way of introduction, you are former Miss Alaska USA in 2017. During that time, during that year, she was participated in the Miss USA pageant, and she was one of the top 10 finalists. And graduate of Stanford University, an author, multi-talented Native woman. We are pleased to have you today, Alyssa.
Oh, thank you so much, Levi. And I do want to give the story for those who don't know it, that I've been going to the Reservation Economic Summit for many years through the National Center of American Indian Enterprise Development. And it was actually on the trade show floor that Levi and I met by way of Rob Jacobs, who I was working with at the time. He was my colleague at Arctic IT. And I had shared with Rob that I had this idea for this book called Journey of the Freckled Indian. And as fate would have it, he introduced me to you, Levi, and then you introduced me to your daughter, Monica Rickert Bolter, and she's just been an amazing person to work with. So thank you so much. I'm glad that we were able to connect on that too.
Yeah, and I think we're family now because Alyssa and Monica worked very well together and are planning a new book. And, hey, talk about the rest. You were there last week, and it was good to see you. I was really impressed. Tell me some of your impressions of what you thought of Res last week, and I just think there's great economic development in Indian country. What was your big takeaway?
Ooh, my big takeaway is that the Res conference was bigger than ever. I think it was almost up to 4,000 attendees. And so that just shows how much energy people in our community have towards building our economies to protect our sovereignty. And I think that the team at the National Center has just made greater investments every year to make sure that conference really brings people together, just like it did for us.
Yeah, that is remarkable. And a lot of times there's so much in the national media about the negativity about being Native. And for us who are involved, we know there's some really strong things happening, that very exciting things. And we have a lot of talented people with reservation dogs, Rutherford Falls, on and on. Secretary of Holland being a first Native American woman. So what do you think about this moment that's happening for us in Indian country?
It's an incredible moment. And even growing up, I didn't get to see these shows. I didn't have someone to look up to like Secretary Holland in terms of a Native woman, in a national position like she is. And I just think it's a long time coming, and I'm glad we're having this moment. I know that a dream that Monica and I share is to also have those of us who are mixed race Native American also have our time to have a voice. And with this period of time, Native people as a conversation within our community are talking about disenrollment and blood quantum and what's the future of our communities. And I really am interested in being a part of that conversation, and that's why I wrote the book Journey of the Freckled Indian, because I think it's an amazing part of my heritage that I am Tlingit, and I know that Monica has stated that she's very proud of being Potawatomi, but we also have parts of our heritage that, in my case, are Czech and Norwegian. And really, the book advocates for being proud of all aspects of your heritage, but not forgetting any one part of it. And I guess my message to people in the Native American community, especially as you raise your children, even if they're mixed race, that doesn't make them any less part of their tribe, of their culture. And the face of Native people today is changing. It doesn't always look like Hollywood used to portray us. And that's why it's so important that now we have shows like Rutherford Falls and Red's Dogs that show modern Indigenous people, so that we're not always depicted and then thought of in people's mind as some individuals from the past. The only way that we're shown is ever in museums, and so we've come a long way.
Well, on a personal level, as a young girl coming up, as you were developing, did you feel a sense of not belonging? I was really impressed with the book, not because my daughter was the artist and you wrote it, but I have to tell you, I was extremely. I've been telling people that it's very much needed because across Indian country there are a lot of blended children. And to talk about your personal experience coming up.
Definitely, we'll touch on my personal experience. I do want to, though, bring us back to something you told me earlier about, your personal connection to, the boarding school era, and how there are things that took place in Native American communities that have influenced the system that caused us to become extremely mixed race. I know that my grandfather told me that his mom, who was born in Angoon, my grandpa was born in the village of Angoon. Angoon is a Kwan, a village in Alaska. When my grandpa was being raised, he was told it doesn't serve him to be Native American anymore, and there's this psychological displacement of well, if it doesn't serve me, if it's not going to allow me to, if my community is not going to allow me to be successful, then what am I going to do to adjust? And even in doing some of the interviews for Culture Story lately with elders, they're like, well, we specifically looked to marry outside of our community because we wanted to have a better chance at being accepted in society and be able to, raise our kids. And so my personal experience, now that was a little long-winded, was all families across Indian country have been influenced into becoming mixed race, and now we still need to accept our children and ourselves as being Native, even though we may have married outside for social reasons.
Yeah, and to your point, I know when I was coming up, I did not learn a lot of the Potawatomi language, and I think that my parents' generation, especially my mother and maybe my grandparents' generation, felt like it was better if we kind of became assimilated. And sad to say that happened, and much of our language has been lost. However, we have seen resurgence in recent decades, which I'm really thrilled about. But it's I really like the book, because it does speak to that. And I'll make a little joke: if we're not too careful, our tribes will be diminished if we don't start falling in love with Native people. How's that? And keep that bloodline going. So that's a whole different story, I know. But
well, actually not. I want, because you did note that I have this opportunity on NBC now and across their news platforms. The original story that I pitched to them that led to my initial appearance was about the Nooksack 306 and the disenrollment of tribal members, because they may or may not have an ancestor that the tribe accepts as part of the Nooksack tribe, but they have grown up and actually on the reservation. The Nooksack people in question have served on tribal council. And so I think there's just really this huge question across Indian country around, what does it mean to be Native today? What is it going to mean to be Native in the future? And I'm fascinated by that because, I haven't gone to the stage of my life yet of marriage and children, but when I do, I want to make sure that my kids get to be Tlingit too, no matter who I marry. Mm-hmm.
I like that. I think that is so critical. And as I said, there's a resurgence in our culture, embracing our culture, and the pride that we should have as Native people. I think we need to really plant it into our children's minds. That's why of my two children, Monica, the illustrator of your book, has probably embraced the culture a little more than her brothers. But so I'm very, very proud. And I'll put a plug in. She had those 3 installations at the Field Museum recently, and as a father there, I was down there. Yeah, I was down
as a friend. I'm just like, go, Monica.
I was just really thrilled about it. It gave me goosebumps because not to be arrogant about it, but to take pride. And I think Native people need to take pride in the accomplishments of our young ones or our children. And I think that's just critical that we do that. And I have never told my children ever that they cannot do anything in terms of, if they said they wanted whatever profession they have chosen. I just think we need to encourage our children, and as Native people, we need to be strong and be stronger. We come from a tradition of being warriors, and not to be in my soapbox today, but I love the tone of what you're going. Tell us more about culture story though, long term, what you're trying to accomplish, Alyssa.
Hopefully I'll get to the part of long term by talking about the short term. So next week is Celebration, which is my tribe's usually biannual big potlatch, or I like to think of it as a reunion. It's about 3 or 4 days, starts off with a canoe and a canoe journey, and then we have our regalia and our artist market, and it's just like really just an amazing time for all of us to come together. We're featuring this in a culture story as part of a 4-part series for Gold Belt Native Corporation, to talk about who Gold Belt is now, where they've come from, and where they're going. But in order to tell that story, we have to talk about the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. We have to talk about how the Native Corps end up funding heritage organizations like Gold Belt Heritage, and that's going to be the canoe that I participate in. Then we talk about how the Tlingit people that ended up becoming the tribal member shareholders of Gold Belt were originally part of Occoquan, where the canoe journey is where we're going to get on it. And then also they were a part of Juneau Indian Village, which is now where the state capital of Alaska is. And so in order to tell these culture stories, meaning the journey of who a person or a tribe or an organization, where they've come from, who they are now, and where they're going, we end up having to integrate in all of this research in order to tell the holistic story, but always with a positive tone of, well, how are we still relevant today, and where is this going into the future? And so much Native content, the way that I had seen it represented in documentaries, was always, this was the Trail of Tears. It was really sad, but it stopped there. It didn't begin or continue to show, where those descendants that survived are continuing to thrive. And so what is Culture Story's future? It's to continue to create rich cultural media content that educates people about this concept of identity. Who are we today? Where did we come from? Where are we going? It facilitates conversations about identity, starting with Indigenous communities, in order to create cross-cultural understanding. And that's what you see in the book. So a lot of the future of Culture Story is around the themes that you see in the book, and it's just represented in future books, media content, and then because of my executive communications business, I end up doing a lot of diversity and inclusion trainings that encourage people to talk about their culture story. And behind the scenes, like, this has been made into a curriculum that we sell then to school districts. My recent talk at the Human Resource Conference, Native American Human Resource Conference, that is more of my diversity and inclusion training around the concept of culture stories. So those are some windows into the future of my company.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you. I know that COVID-19, the pandemic, actually slowed down some appearances that you and even Monica wanted to make, and I do know you did some Zoom ones. And I'm excited for you, because it's time to get out on the trail pushing that book and the whole concept behind what you're doing. And I just really like what you're doing in terms of keeping that culture going. Hey, speak to us about the youth. What do you? One thing I'm really impressed with, Alyssa, is you really, really have a strong interest in our Native youth, and I think that's so tremendous. Tell us about that commitment.
My commitment to Native youth is partly related to your earlier question around, is this coming from like personal experience? So, growing up, I, like many people, lived in 2 worlds. So this represents, growing up in average America, where you just want to fit in. And then this other side represents, this really amazing culture that I come from in Alaska. And I would tell people about it. I even remember in 2nd grade, my parents came in and did a show and tell with me about Tlingit creation story, the Box of Daylight. But even from elementary school all the way through Stanford, I would need to kind of qualify myself, like, I am Tlingit, I am Native, but I'm also Czech and Norwegian, and I am proud of that as well. But I just have always struggled with feeling like accepted for my identity, and it seems that other people struggle with that as well. And whether you're Native or not, I think everyone just wants to be able to feel proud of who they are. And so I just thought, if I started with Native youth and allowed them to feel more confident with their identity from a young age. I thought that confidence would translate into them feeling validated to engage with their culture for their entire life. And also, I think confidence allows you to do better in school and in sports and anything you want to pursue in life. And then one more thing is like the Miss Alaska experience hugely influenced why I focus a lot on Native youth, because when you're putting that crown on, you get to, and you're a cultural ambassador for your tribe, you get to interface with Native youth so much. And it's just really is the best feeling in the world when a little one comes up to you and tells you how you make a difference in their life or inspire you, or how you inspire them. So that's why I continue to focus in this area.
Yeah, and I keep using the word tremendous, but the idea that we still have some of the highest rates of suicide of any racial ethnic group in the world, I just think what your work to inspire youth is downright tremendous. So thank you for that. Hey, in your travels and in your work this year, what have you been encountering as it relates to Indian boarding schools? You touched on it a little bit, but tell us a little more about what you're finding out. What are people telling you about Indian boarding schools?
Indian boarding schools is a much bigger issue than people realize, and Secretary Deb Haaland is bringing a lot of light to it. And I think we're going to get into a period of time in which a lot of healing will take place by people's stories being told and validated. And it is a significant reason why our identities have gone through periods of forced erasure. And I hope that by using my skills as a storyteller through Culture Story and NBC, that I can help some people with the healing process of reflecting about that time, but also showing that perhaps some justice is served by the people who are in power, like Secretary Haaland, who perhaps could get, apologies or other things more at that high level in the federal government to be issued to our communities. And so I think this is just going to be a big story for a long time, as it should be.
Yes, and hopefully, as you embark on your journey with NBC News, they will focus more on it. I know they actually sent a camera crew up to Harbor Springs, Michigan, where there was a Holy Childhood school, and they've used segments periodically during the last year. So it is a time, I want to say, for the native for the mainstream media. Now, Native News Online, I'm proud to announce we have published about just around 100 stories so far in the last year about the Indian boarding schools. So, and I like to say that mainstream media goes after the shiny object often, and then they move on. But Native News Online will keep working this story because there are so many stories that need to be told yet. And I compliment you, and maybe you can have some good influence over at NBC to tell that story. And I think you're going to be strong representations. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to do my best at NBC, and I say it that way because, I didn't realize I was one of the first or the first contributor. I didn't realize there was a difference between guests and contributors. So this has all happened so soon, like in time of like actually the announcement, and then me kind of getting just a footing and understanding this platform or stage that I can help use for Indian country. And I just want everyone in our community to know, as a Tlingit from up north, but also who grew up in Seattle, I'm going to do my best to become more informed about all the other tribes in the nation, but at the same time, I only know what I know from my experience, and so it's an honor to speak on behalf of us. But I hope that my position just makes it so there's more people from our community that have diversity of experiences and opinions that can represent tribes all over our nation. And because I don't think it should just be one voice that gets to have that national platform, but I will do my best while I am that voice.
Well, thank you for that. I really like that. And hey, I'm gonna go back to Rez. You were there last week, and you interviewed Wayne Newton, the legendary singer, and
He was so nice.
Yeah, being Potawatomi, I did not realize he was Potawatomi. What was your big takeaway from interviewing Wayne Newton?
My biggest takeaway is that even though he's not enrolled in the Potawatomi tribe, that he's just so proud of his identity and that he knows who he is. And because of things like boarding schools and like the forced erasure or the forced like adoption of our people, there are native people that are not enrolled, but that doesn't diminish if I mean if their parent truly told them like you are this is who you are and then they choose to like devote their life as he does at least in part to help with federal recognition and other issues in Indian country, then by all means you're a part of our community. That was one of my biggest takeaways. Also that he's just a really great example to native youth in terms of just going after his dreams and that work is not work when it's something that you love and that it can also carry you in his case through your 80s when it's something that's so intrinsic to your passion.
Yeah, and I feel very blessed that I'm able to work my passion with Native News Online.
Me too.
And you're right in terms of, well, it doesn't seem like work. I tell you when it seems like work is like late at night. I'm just downright exhausted. but seriously,
But then Levi, what drives you into the night? It's something inside of you. It's probably getting you said your mom's story told. That's probably what drives you. And the fact that you do work in Native news, like, and that we both agree, there's so many stories that are told that or that are to be told, need to be told. That's what causes you to stay up in the middle of the night.
It is. It really is exciting. And this time of year, I like to go out in the side yard and do a fire and just relax out there. And we Native people love those fires anyway. But it's been. I've had 3 fires this past week. So after Res, I got home. I was pretty tired after getting home, and I'm sure you're tired. But I was really impressed with the Res this year. They had Quanah Chasing Horse, Mo Brings Plenty, and Wayne Newton, and seemed to be an emphasis on the entertainers. And so exciting to see what's happening in Indian country. And we already talked about it. It seems to be a moment for us.
Definitely does. Yeah, Res was a great experience. I enjoy every Res, and every Res is a little bit different, but it's a great time to connect with people from our community for sure.
And our people are really happy to get back out after 2 years of COVID. So it was
we're social.
Very social, and it was really nice to be with each other and be in the same room. Well, Alyssa, thank you very much. Do you have anything else to add real quickly, or I really appreciate it.
If you want to follow along with Culture Story, we're on all social media platforms at Culture Story or Our Culture Story. And then if you want to follow along my journey, it's Alyssa K. London on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and then AlysaLondon.com. So Ganeshish, and thank you so much, Levi.
Yeah. McWitch to you, Chi McWitch. And to our viewers, next week we'll be on with Walea Johns, who's Navajo. She's the director of energy at the U.S. Department of Energy, and she's going to be on talking about some of the infrastructure programs for Native Americans. So please join us next week at 12 noon Eastern Daylight Time, and you can watch those of you who have been able to watch today. Tell your friends about Alyssa will be on our YouTube channel, Native News Online. Google it, Native News Online, the YouTube channel, and other social media. So, Chi McWitch, thank you and have a good week.